I, a 32-year-old female, got in a literal fight with my father-in-law, a 65-year-old male, this weekend. My son, a 4-year-old male, stated that his grandpa pinched him, and I immediately checked on him. He confirmed that his grandpa pinched him, but I thought it was an accident. The child was fine, and I was willing to move on and maybe address it later because we were at a museum. I went in to talk to my father-in-law to apologize for potentially overreacting, and he blew up on me, saying that our child doesn't understand no and needs to understand it, etc. Typical boomer stuff. He eventually told me to go frick myself, that I didn't need to go to their house, and neither does my son if he doesn't play by his rules, whatever that means. I was floored, turned around, and left. My husband, a 36-year-old male, married nearly 12 years, and we have 2 toddlers, is generally pretty solid together with normal hiccups, and is on my side. He talks to his dad, and we stay apart for the rest of the day. I plan to never speak to him again, at least for now, because I have never been spoken to with such disrespect from someone I generally respect. We hash it out with my husband once we can get out of this place. We go to their house to pack our stuff and head out. My father-in-law wants to talk to me. I consider it for an apology, but instead, he dives into how my child doesn't understand no, and how we're never going to get along, and how he doesn't agree with anything I do for the kids, blah blah. It's incredibly upsetting, and I eventually explode, which is fully not my nature. I tell him I thought we had been civil, even friendly for years, but that I knew they never liked me and thought I was some pretentious jerk who took their son away. They've treated me poorly for years, and I was going to maintain civility forever, but I snapped at this point. I said a few things that definitely overstepped and caused a lot of hurt. I told my father-in-law that his childhood trauma was not going to play a role in how we parented our kids. He has never discussed his difficult childhood, and this definitely crossed a line for him. I also expect he feels betrayed by his son for telling me about it, but neither of us knows anything other than he had a really tough childhood and moved out at 15. I didn't consider the impact of this statement until my husband provided a bit more context after the fact. So obviously now I feel worse. I told my husband that his parents will always love him, but right now his priority is our family and to get us out of this house, which belongs to his parents. This made my husband feel as though I was giving him an ultimatum to choose between his parents and me and the kids forever. This also was very hurtful for my father-in-law since his parents didn't love him, so no, he doesn't have to love me, per my husband. I explained that that was not what I meant. I just meant to tell your dad to shut up and get me out of this house right now. He understood the explanation, but is still hurt. Please help me out. How can we move forward? I have never acted like this before and am generally extremely respectful. Now, 2 days later, I'm feeling really embarrassed and regretful. Though I don't regret the overall basis of the argument, I do know I overstepped, though he did in many ways as well, including insinuating I'm mentally unstable for my anti-Trump posts and that his friends agree, and that my kids are going to turn out poorly because of how I parent, which is incredibly triggering for me. I definitely pointed out that his son and I are a team who both make parenting decisions, but for some reason, I'm the bad guy and always have been. I don't know, I'm truly spiraling. My father-in-law hasn't spoken to my husband because he's seething, and my husband is cordial but wandering around like a hurt puppy. I feel so many things, and yesterday I couldn't stop crying. I have a therapist and take medication for depression, and I am practically begging my husband to go talk to someone, even just a friend, because that was traumatic to watch 2 people he loves fight like that, and he has to be able to process out loud. I'm rambling, I'm so sorry, please help, any input would be great. But honestly, be gentle because I am feeling messed up right now. To answer a couple of questions, we do not live with them. They live about an hour and a half away, but we usually see them once a month. Often his mom will visit without his dad, so I don't plan to keep the kids from her if she can continue to do that. My husband needs to do some serious soul searching as well. I'm worried this is the beginning of the end, as he refuses to speak to a professional, and I don't think he'll do anything but harbor guilt and resentment for many layered reasons if he doesn't go and work it out with a counselor. For what it's worth, they are blaming Grandpa's increasing health issues for his lashing out. However, I work with elderly sick folks for a living and will not accept that as an excuse, because even the worst patients don't spew such vitriol. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Ask your husband if he would be okay with a perfect stranger pinching your child. And when he says no, ask him why it's okay for your father-in-law to do it when a stranger can't. Why is it not okay for a stranger to abuse your child, but it is okay for a family member? If your husband would be okay with a stranger pinching your child, then you have bigger problems. Your father-in-law's trauma has caused your husband trauma, and it's spilling over to you and your child. It's good that you are in therapy. Keep being in therapy. Your father-in-law pushed you until you snapped. That is something hurtful people do to get an explosive reaction from the person they are egging on, so they can then point their finger at you and make you feel bad. It is also to make them feel better by convincing themselves that you are worse. The best way to avoid this is to gray rock. Your husband needs to start setting boundaries with his family, for his sake, their sake, and your sake. Tell him it hurts everyone when boundaries aren't set and upheld, because it does. Comment 2. Original poster, I'm going to stop you right there. Do not blame yourself for reactive abuse. You reacted the way you did because your father-in-law was way out of bounds, using corporal punishment without checking with you first, then immediately jumping to disrespectful insults, and he escalated multiple times before you unloaded on him, including insinuating I'm mentally unstable for my anti-Trump posts and that his friends agree. Why on earth is your father-in-law arguing politics with the mother of his grandchild? What the actual literal heck? Original poster. Where was your husband when his father was actively bullying you? They've treated me poorly for years. And where was your husband during all of this? Your response to this should be straightforward. 1. Husband, go straighten out your father and tell me when it's sorted. There is no step 2. Now for the update. The other day I was at my niece's birthday party and saw a lot of familiar faces among the family. It's been a couple of weeks since the whole mess with my father-in-law. My husband and I decided to just act normal for the kids, so we went to the party even though things have been a bit rocky. The kids were excited, and my sister-in-law really went all out with the decorations, so it was nice to see them all having fun. But yeah, it was so obvious no one was really comfortable. You could feel that everyone was being super careful around us, so my husband and I just kept things light. We chatted about the weather and the kids, favorite cartoons, the usual stuff that keeps the party going. It got even more awkward when my father-in-law showed up. He arrived later than everyone else, and it was clear he was trying to avoid me. He brought this huge gift for our son, acting like nothing happened. I mean, it was a nice gesture, but the whole thing just felt so fake. My husband smiled when he saw his dad, but he didn't really talk to him much. It was like they were just ignoring each other. When it was time for cake, my father-in-law made this snide remark about my parenting. Honestly, I was so tired of all the drama, so I just kept quiet and watched the kids dig into the cake. They were so happy, and that's all I wanted. I didn't want to ruin their day, so I took a deep breath and just focused on their smiles. Later that night, my father-in-law sent me a text asking if we could meet up to discuss everything. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed to meet him at a diner close to where we live. I thought maybe we could sort things out, or at least I could get him to see my side of things. When I got to the diner, the whole place felt icy. He jumped right into it, accusing me of ruining the family's bonds. I told him he was wrong and that he needed to listen to me. I reminded him about our son saying he was pinched. He just dismissed my concerns and said I was overreacting. After our meeting, I called my sister and vented about it. She thought we should confront him together, so that's what we decided to do. A week later, we had another family gathering for Easter. The tension was there as soon as we arrived. My father-in-law acted like he was the life of the party, being extra friendly with everyone except me. During dinner, he made this joke at my expense, and everyone awkwardly laughed. My husband was right next to me, and he just sat there in silence. I felt so alone. That was it. I snapped. I called him out in front of everybody. The room went dead silent, and his face turned bright red. He accused me of manipulating the family dynamics. We ended up going back and forth, and I swear some people's jaws were on the floor. Finally, my husband spoke up. He told his dad that he was being a jerk and that this needed to stop. My father-in-law just stormed out. After that evening, things were still pretty quiet. A few days later, my husband got a call from his mom. She wanted to have a family meeting to discuss what happened. I was all for it, but I knew it was going to be a mess. At the meeting, things got heated again. My father-in-law refused to apologize, of course. This time, my husband really stood up for me. He confronted his dad about his awful behavior towards us. My father-in-law had the nerve to say that we were being disrespectful to family tradition. I was like, what tradition? Pinching my son? He wants to talk about disrespect? I realized that I had to take control of the narrative. I posted a picture of my son at the birthday party, smiling his little heart out. I captioned it about how important family is, even if some people don't understand that. It was my little way of saying, look at my kid, he's happy, and we will be okay. My father-in-law saw that post and sent me the longest, most insulting message ever. He was furious, and honestly, it was a bit of a relief to see his true colors so openly. After everything that's happened, I decided to limit my contact with him. I told my husband that I just can't deal with his drama anymore. He understood and said he would try to protect me from it as much as he could. Since then, things have shifted a bit in our family dynamics. My husband is starting to see some of the flaws in his father's behavior. It feels good to know that he's got my back. Edit. My husband and I have been actively working on our relationship. We're not seeking counseling yet, but we're having honest discussions about boundaries and family. I've been open with him about how his father's actions affect me and our kids. He even suggested we spend less time with his parents, which is a big step for him. We both know it won't be easy, but we're committed to making it work. My father-in-law still sends passive-aggressive messages, but I've stopped engaging. My husband has taken the lead in responding, and it feels like a weight off my shoulders. We're focusing on our family's happiness and well-being. Am I the idiot for letting my wife's wedding demands tear my family apart? My wife, who is 36 years old, and I, who am 38 years old, got married but didn't have a wedding celebration due to infection-19 restrictions a few years ago. Prior to our marriage, my wife said she wanted me to pay for the whole wedding when we have a wedding in the future. We calculated an estimated cost for our future wedding, and she asked me to set aside the money in our joint account for the future wedding, which I did before we got married. To this day, I haven't told anybody, including my family, that I deposited the money for our future wedding. Right after we got married, my wife got pregnant, and our plans for a wedding had to be delayed. The money I deposited into our joint account was then transferred to her own account, as she says she wants to make sure we don't use the funds for anything but the wedding. We have not had a wedding yet, as our toddler is still young. When we got married, my parents asked me when we were going to have a wedding, as they wanted to help out and give us a gift. I told them that we are still working on when to have a wedding, and will let them know when we decide. I told them not to say anything about the wedding, as we were the ones who were going to make a decision on the wedding. And I didn't want them to give us suggestions on how to do the wedding, as I know my wife is very particular about what she wants in the wedding. My wife's parents live far away and visited us when our baby was an infant and got to meet my parents for the first time. During their time here, my wife's mom asked my mom what she thought about us not having a wedding yet. Knowing that I have previously told my mom not to say anything about our future wedding, my mom didn't really say anything or give an opinion. My wife was there when this happened, but I wasn't. Afterward, my wife told me that she was really upset that my mom didn't say anything. She said it was very disrespectful that my mom didn't say that she thinks that we should have a wedding. I believe that my wife is also not happy that my parents have not given her any wedding gifts, which I know they are waiting to give once we have a wedding. She did hint that she wasn't too happy that my parents didn't offer us any help for the wedding, as she said that her parents said they were going to help with our future wedding. I told my wife that my parents did mention that they were going to help, but I just didn't tell her, which is true. However, I don't feel my parents should help, as I've already given her the funds to cover the wedding. My parents have already helped me with so much in life, and I don't want either of our parents, mine and hers, helping. Now, my wife is angry at my parents and does not want to ever visit them, including for special events like birthdays. My parents don't know she's angry at them or why yet, as I haven't told them. I'm very close to my parents, and am hoping to get some advice on how to mend my wife's relationship with my parents. Please also let me know if you think she's being unreasonable. If it helps, we're both Chinese, but she was born in China and follows a traditional Chinese style when it comes to weddings, gifts, and who pays for weddings. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It is interesting that your wife wants to be traditional, but is unbothered that the wedding is coming after your child. She seems to be quite demanding on the topic, and yet she also seems like she can't get her act together to plan this wedding. Do you think she is afraid of it in some way? You are married and you have started your family. It seems like the time for a big wedding has passed. But if she thinks there is going to be a wedding, when does she think it should be? Comment 2. You're already married. Any party you throw now is just that, a party. I mean, you can call it a wedding celebration, but you're married, you've had a baby, the pandemic is now endemic, so quite some time has passed. Ask your wife if she still has the full amount set aside, because it sounds like she spent it and is now looking to replenish her savings account. Now for the update, I'm back with more drama about my marriage. Some of you were quick to say I was in the wrong for something my wife was upset about. I tried to fix that, but it totally backfired. About a week after I posted, my mom called. She asked if my wife and I were coming for Easter dinner. She mentioned how much she missed our toddler and how nice it would be to spend time together. I hesitated. I told her I would check with my wife. I brought it up to my wife, and she flat out refused to go. She said she wasn't comfortable with my parents. I tried explaining to her that this was an important family gathering, but she didn't budge. I decided to go alone. I thought that maybe it could ease the tension. Easter dinner was nice, and my parents were excited to see me. They noticed that I came alone without my wife and kid, though. My dad asked where they were, but I made a vague excuse about them being busy. My mom served the traditional Easter ham, and the atmosphere was cheerful, but I felt out of place. About halfway through dinner, my younger sister asked about wedding plans, thinking it was a light topic. This triggered a conversation about weddings, and I felt cornered. My mom mentioned how they were still waiting for an invite, which made me uncomfortable. I quickly changed the subject, but my parents were visibly disappointed. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay with my wife. I brushed it off, but my dad insisted on knowing if there was more to the story. I finally admitted to my dad about the financial arrangements for the wedding that my wife was unaware of. He suggested having an open conversation with her to clear things up. Days later, I confronted my wife about the Easter dinner. I wanted to understand her perspective. She suggested we could plan a small wedding without any family involvement. Tensions flared, and we both raised our voices in our living room. In the heat of the moment, I mentioned how important family was to me. My wife quickly countered that family was the reason she felt disrespected and undervalued. After that, I found my wife packing a suitcase. She said she needed to get away. She told me she was going to stay with her parents for a few days to think. I felt blindsided and asked if we were okay, but she didn't answer. I watched her leave and realized how serious our situation was. A week passed, and I got a text from her saying she felt overwhelmed. I decided to call my parents and explain everything, hoping to fix things. My mom expressed concern for both me and my wife. She suggested we avoid discussing weddings for now. I realized the rift between my wife and my family had become unmanageable. Then I decided to focus on my immediate family. I walked away from the pressure of planning a wedding. Edit. I see that some of you are confused about the financial aspect of our wedding. My wife and I have a joint account for shared expenses, like rent and groceries. Before we got married, I opened a separate account to save money for our wedding. It was my idea since my wife had specific plans for the wedding and I wanted to respect that. After we got married, I transferred the money from my account to the joint account, but my wife wanted to move it to her account for the wedding only. My parents and my sister know about the money in the joint account. Am I the idiot for calling out my husband's lies in front of his work friend at a coffee shop? My partner and I have been together for 2 years now, and we have been living together for a little over a year. Things are great, except he keeps hiding things from me. When we first got together, I made it clear that my biggest, most important boundary was lying. We could fix any problem or talk about it, but I wouldn't handle any lying or hiding things. My trust is extremely hard to earn back after losing it. It started about a year ago when I found out from a mutual friend that he had been telling them things I told him and specifically asked to keep between us, secrets, gossip, insecurities, etc. When I called him out and asked why he did it, he denied saying anything. He kept doing it until I showed the messages, and he caved. He apologized, cried, and promised it wouldn't happen again. It has happened a few times since, each time with no reasoning, just that he wasn't thinking, along with lots of tears and apologies. The worst one was last week. He had started smoking again after quitting for a year, and didn't tell me. He knows I don't love smoking, but it's not a big deal for me. At the end of the day, it's not something I care about. But he would wait until I was at work or out with friends to do it and hide it. And when I would ask if he had started again, he would say no. I found out because we were on his phone looking at videos when his best friend sent one. He tapped on it and it showed it was the start of their conversation. They have been close friends for over 5 years, so I was well aware of it. When I asked why he had deleted all their messages, he said he hadn't and didn't know what had happened. He said he hadn't multiple times and even typed out a message asking if his friends' messages were all deleted as well, and sent it. I asked again a few hours later, and he said no. I kept pressing it, and he confessed he didn't want me to find out about the smoking, so he deleted their chats just in case. Everything about our relationship is so wonderful, but I can't handle the fact that every time I find out, I have had to ask multiple times before he has confessed. He has never once told me without me finding out previously. I don't want to end anything, but I hate going about my day stressing about what he is hiding that I haven't found. I have asked if I have done anything to make him feel that way or if there is a reason, but he can't think of any reason. He has been so unable to confess, and it's tearing us apart. Is there any way to fix it, or is the trust broken? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If you set a boundary and he broke that boundary and you still stayed, those boundaries of yours are pretty weak to non-existent. He felt you out on them and basically walked all over and crushed them. Yeah, there is no fixing this. You let him walk all over your boundaries, and it won't stop until you end things. Once was a mistake. Anything after that is deliberate. He knows he can get by with it by saying sorry and crying. So now you have to figure out if you want to deal with his small lies until they get bigger and you find out he did the unforgivable. Then you're hurt, asking why. You won't need therapy to figure it out. It started when you let him slide by with the petty stuff. Time to put up and get out of it, or stay and deal with it until you are so beaten down by the lies and lack of respect that you finally run from him. Good luck, OP. You're going to need it if you stay. Update me, please. Comment 2. You're not his therapist, and you shouldn't have to work to fix his dishonesty. If he truly cared, he would stop lying and start being upfront without you needing to pry the truth out of him. You can't change someone who isn't willing to change. If this behavior continues, you have to face the reality that this relationship isn't healthy. Trust is the foundation of every relationship, and if that's been broken, it won't be fixed if both sides don't make an effort. If he isn't putting in the work, then you need to seriously consider whether this relationship is worth your time and energy. Don't settle for someone who doesn't respect you enough to be honest. Now, for the update, I'm here with another update about my relationship with a partner who can't stop lying. So, a few months have passed since my last incident of dishonesty with my partner. I decided to stay in the relationship, hoping for some kind of change. I mean, I really do love this guy, and despite his dishonesty, he's been really great. He just can't seem to stop lying. When I decided to stay with him, he seemed more attentive at first, but then old habits came back, and I started feeling the same anxiety I had before. I planned a weekend getaway to a cabin to reconnect and have some fun away from everything. I was really looking forward to it. During the trip, my partner got a phone call late at night. I was half asleep on the couch, and he was in the kitchen. I just remember hearing him talking to someone, and I could make out bits of the conversation while pretending to sleep. He was discussing something secretive with his best friend. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough to feel uneasy. The next morning, my partner brushed off the call, saying it was work-related. I didn't press him about it because I thought maybe I was overreacting. After returning home, though, he started acting distant again, and that's when I found a receipt for a hotel stay on the table one evening. The receipt was dated for the past weekend while we were at the cabin. My heart sank when I saw it. I confronted him about the hotel stay. He claimed it was for a work project but offered no details. That's when I decided to look through his messages for clarity. I know this is wrong, but I was just desperate for some answers. I found messages discussing plans to meet a friend at the hotel. I was so angry and hurt. He caught me looking and demanded to know what I was doing, and then he exploded, accusing me of not trusting him. The argument got worse, and he stormed out of the house. After that, I got a text from him later saying he needed space. A few days passed with no communication from him. I tried calling, but he didn't answer. During this time, I went to a family dinner with my parents and siblings. I just wanted to get my mind off everything. During dinner, the topic of relationships came up, and my sister casually mentioned seeing my partner at a coffee shop with another person. My heart sank all over again. We decided to drive by the coffee shop after the dinner. I spotted my partner sitting at a table, laughing with a woman. We parked the car and walked into the coffee shop. My partner looked startled when he saw me. I demanded an explanation in front of the woman. He stammered, claiming it was just a work meeting. The woman awkwardly excused herself, leaving us alone. I insisted that I was done with the lies. He begged for another chance, saying he was confused. Like, how many chances does he want? Mini update. After our confrontation, my partner moved back to his parents' place. He reached out to his best friend, who admitted knowing about the woman all along. I'm heartbroken. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.